Corrupt Authority by yours truly. 15 minutes had gone by, and Kenta, Red, and Brendan stood in a little triangle, while Hibiki and the Garjavire looked on, forgotten for the moment. The three were in the midst of a heated discussion, with Brendan only slightly calmer than he had been in the moment he had discovered his doppelganger in the locker. Having heard Kenta's story, Brendan nevertheless stood rooted in his conviction that G.R.I.P was unbeatable. "Both of you are out of your minds," he insisted, pointing his finger between Kenta and Red. "There are entirely too many variables in this plan of yours that you can't count on. What if Team Rocket or the other renegade trainers don't step in to help? What if the snag machine plan fails? What if G.R.I.P hired a few trainers into this tournament who actually specialize in killing and making it look like an accident?" "I know," said Red shortly, "but I don't care. If there was a better time to do this, it's already past." "Remember the kind of people we are," Kenta added. "Red dove headfirst into a rocket hideout before he had even gotten his 4th badge. I approached a Raikou when it threatened to shock me to death at point-blank range. You climbed a rickety tower during an earthquake to awaken a Ragnarok dragon." Kenta smiled. "We're a reckless bunch, and times are calling for that again." Brendan frowned and crossed his arms. Red smirked slightly. "Oh, come on, don't try to hide it. I can already see that manic glint in your eye." Hibiki saw it too, if only for a fraction of a second. A flash of old, fiery expression, like that of a trainer proclaiming his intentions to be a master for the first time, before the world. At the core of his being, Brendan was a guy who rose to a challenge. "All right," he said steadily. "You've told me what you're going to do, and have done to this moment. But what now? Do you expect to go out there, pretend to be me, and tell G.R.I.P to disband? Because any sort of offensive action would be like walking up to a Blaziken and kicking it in the shin." Kenta smiled a devilish grin. "Not if you fight dirty. You see, Bill's done more with his time than build a signal disruptor. The stuff in Red's backpack will change the narrative. To alter your analogy, I plan to kick the Blaziken in the nuts, then gouge it in the throat, twist its head around 270 degrees, and serve it up to the nation with teriyaki sauce." Brendan's face whitened, and Hibiki laughed in spite of himself. The Garjavire glanced at him with a concerned look, and he shrugged. "He's a scary guy sometimes. You'll learn to live with it." Kenta tightened the beanie over his head, nodding at Brendan. "You've got this right, though. I want to go out there dressed as you, one last time." Brendan hesitated for a moment, but a firmness of resolve seemed to wash over him the next instant, and he nodded back. "All right, you crazy jackass, go ahead, but at least tell me why." "And it begins!" boomed the commentator's voice, echoing through sound speakers all over Indigo Stadium. "The Masters Tournament of 2008 will start off with the answer to an epic question. Wallace beat Steven, and Brendan beat Wallace. But what would have happened if Brendan had faced Steven? From the East Gate, please welcome the former champion of Steel Resolve, Steven Stone!" A roar of approval burst from the crowd as a gray-haired man in his early 30s strode out onto the central battlefield. An enormous sign above the arena flared to life, displaying his face and upper torso in champion uniform. Beside it, 2 Pokeball icons flashed, indicating the number of Pokemon to be used for the match. "And from the West, a man who needs no introduction, being the uncontested champion for longer than..." Within the corridor leading out to the field, Hibiki, Kenta, and Brendan stood ready for the call to go out. Red was no longer with them, having gone to take care of some other business. As the announcer built up to Brendan's name, Kenta glanced back at Hibiki and swallowed hard. "This is it, huh?" asked Hibiki in a thin voice. His own heartbeat was drumming mercilessly. He couldn't imagine how it must be like for Kenta. "This is it," Kenta whispered in confirmation. "Hey, He looked meaningfully at Hibiki. "Just in case I don't get the chance to say this later, I want you to know how thankful I am that you came with me, brother. Brendan Birch!" Anything Hibiki could have said was lost in the deluge of noise the crowd made. From a bird's-eye view over the stadium, one would witness trainers of all ages rising to their feet with screams and thunderous applause as a young man in white, red, and black moved into view on the side of the battlefield opposite to Steven. The scoreboard sign lit up again, posting Brendan's beaming profile in the usual clothes. On the field, 8 uniformed guards stood with arms crossed at the walls, while a referee bearing 2 flags approached the center floor. Clasping both flags in one hand, he produced a microphone in the other and cleared his throat. In compliance with tradition, both trainers will have a moment to address each other before combat. The crowd is reminded to please minimize noise from this point on, as it is necessary for the Pokemon to hear their trainer's orders directly from them during the fight. As the referee spoke, the trainers' platforms at the east and west gates began to rise off the ground, simultaneously producing safety rails for the height. The stadium was built in such a way that, in addition to protection, the elevated positions would allow trainer voices to be naturally amplified. Pointing his flags at Steven, the referee gave a short tweet on his whistle. Steven opened his arms in what looked like an embrace. Every match I get to fight in this tournament is its own gift, but battling you will be the greatest. I've been meaning to fight you ever since you took Wallace's place, but there was simply never time. He reached outwards with his right arm. I want to know what you saw on your journey with Pokemon. I want to know what you felt. I want you to hit me with it all. In this match that never was, but always should have been, I say to you now, bring it! Another eruption of cheers. The referee pointed at Brendan and whistled, and the crowd stilled to such a breathless silence that the humming of the scoreboard could be heard. Well, came the reply, sounding hesitant, this is awkward. After all your years of waiting, I'm afraid I can't give you what you want. But the young man drew himself up, taller. I will let you know what I've seen and felt, and the moment this battle begins, I will have a gift for you. Trust me, you'll understand when you see it. A few confused murmurings broke out in the crowd, but the referee gave a sharp blast of his whistle and backed up, waving his flags.
There's the signal to start the match!
Exclaimed the announcer.
Who will face off first? Let the Pokeballs fly!
From Steven's side burst a massive tri-horn Pokemon that shook the stands as it landed, an Aggron. Opposite to it materialized a creature of similar size and weight, and Steven cried out in shocked exclamation as he looked upon it. Appearance of a 4-legged tank, cross over its face, and running down its left eye, a jagged vertical scar. What? Metagross? How? Steven looked up at his opponent on the stand, and the surrounding crowd gave utter gasps of astonishment, and the guards stood rigidly, grabbing for their Pokeballs. Brendan, how? The other trainer reached for his white beanie and pulled it from his head, dropping it to the ground. I'm not Brendan Birch, he said, but I am on your side. He produced a cap of black and gold, and set it where the beanie had been. This Metagross belongs at your side as well, not opposite to you. He is not mine, and not the property of my Keru, whom I took it from, and certainly not Grip's. He is yours alone, and I return him to you now, in the name of Gold! With a great thrust of his arms, Gold, Kenta, flung Metagross's Master Ball all the way across the battlefield to Steven's perch. Though he was still too stunned to speak, Steven caught the ball, looking at Kenta with disbelieving eyes.
What a twist of events!
Cried the announcer.
Was this drama planned before the show? It looks like security is moving in to arrest the imposter posing as Brendan. I think I speak for everyone when I say, where is the real champion Birch?
There were 8 flashes of light, and the battlefield was suddenly surrounded by top-tier Pokemon. Kenta took them in with a brief look. Walrein, Electabuzz, Rhyperior, Venusaur, Alakazam, Tyranitar, Scizor, and Magmortar. Without hesitation, he loosed his final 2 Pokemon. In another blaze of Pokeball energy, Salamence and Zapdos appeared on either side of his trainer platform, flapping on the wind. Kenta looked around at the officers in front of him. You fellas look disappointed. Did Arcata tell you I was dead before he confirmed the kill? On the contrary, said the closest officer. He said we should expect an appearance from you. Walrein! A flurry of ice shards and hailstones burst from the walrus Pokemon's mouth. A blizzard attack aimed directly at Kenta. Immediately, Bolt whirled in front of them, letting off a shielding green aura that dispelled the icy attack. Kenta pointed at the Walrein. Thanks, Bolt. Zapdos! Thunder! The electrical bird charged up and let loose a crackling blast of yellow energy. However, before it reached Walrein, its path changed course, seeping instead into the horn of Rhyperior. This was a combination that Kenta's team couldn't hope to beat under normal circumstances, let alone 8-2, without a mutual knockout. Even if Bolt's Brick Break was capable of ending Walrein in one hit, Rhyperior would just finish him off with a well-placed Rock-type attack. And it wasn't like Zapdos could electrocute Walrein until Rhyperior and its Lightning Rod ability were done away with first. Kenta had bet upon the Rhydon evolution having the Solid Rock ability, and he had lost. The other guards simultaneously pointed at Zapdos, who unlike Salamence, had no Protect Up. Commands for high-level special and physical attacks echoed through the stadium, but one bellow suddenly drowned them all out. Muddy water! From directly behind Kenta's raised platform, a tidal wave of brown swept through the stadium. It was not high enough to reach the crowded stands, but it cast a shadow over every man and Pokemon that weren't in the elevated trainer boxes. What is this? Screamed the guard with the Magmortar. Kenta smiled coldly. Fighting dirty. With a mighty rushing noise, the muddy tide collapsed all at once, smashing mercilessly upon its victims. When it cleared and drained, 8 men lay upon the ground, covered in muck. The only Pokemon left standing were Venusaur, Metagross, and Aggron, the latter whom had only avoided fainting because of his sturdy ability. Zapdos and Bolt hovered above the field, safe from harm.